which is called the ring of positive and negative deeds, or as I like to call them, activities. Um, I just want to quickly reframe kind of how we got there. So fundamentally, I tried to really underscore in last week's session how important it is to understand the nature of um, how our consciousness moves moment by moment. What is that really? And how is that connected to the three poisons, that inner circle? And so quickly, just to recap, we look at misapprehension or ignorance as sort of the root um, poison, meaning that state of mind that we experience where we're unaware, we misapprehend the true nature of how things really are. And that's what then leads to the other two root or main poisons that are in that inner circle, which is causing the flow of our conscious experience moment by moment as we're interacting with things and others, whether it's phenomena or people, to experience them in a way that is not what's really happening, misapprehending. And that misapprehension leads to those other two roots. It's we're either grabbing onto it in some way, which could be positive or negative. And we'll talk a lot about that today when we talk about positive and negative activities of the next ring. So it's not that being attracted to things or desiring others are bad, but is it informed? Are we doing it ignorantly, if you will, or misapprehending its true nature and thereby missing the real experience of what it means? Same thing with aversion, the other third root cause, which is what we tend to experience based on misapprehension of things, meaning phenomena or others, where we, because of our misapprehension and lack of understanding of what's going on, we want to push that experience or push those others away. So I refocus us on that, keep that in mind, because that's sort of the engine, the foundation on which the wheel operates. The foundation on which the wheel operates, how, as it works through the moment by moment conscious experience that we have as an individual, if you will, as a self. That misapprehension is the fertile soil of what we also talked about last time, which is karma. If we don't want to think about karma from a traditional point of view, we could think about it from a scientific point of view. Essentially, the simple reality of all things have a cause and then they have a result, or cause and effect. And in our conscious flow, moment by moment flow, that fertile soil where experience, actions of thought, speech, and body occur moment by moment is planted, if you will. The kleshas, remember I talked about kleshas last time, in our consciousness. That consciousness is the soil. So I'm trying to make it visceral and sort of really very, very, very basic in terms of understanding how, as we experience things, we're either grabbing onto things or pushing them away without understanding them properly. And those kinds of seeds being planted, in ignorance or in misapprehension, are what then will continue to grow as long as we keep moment by moment experiencing things in that misinformed way, and they accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, and they eventually ripen. They are the cause for the results that we have. But as we move past that, that in the context of analyzing and looking at the wheel, we look past that inner circle, which is that, that foundation for where things come from in the flow of our consciousness. We look to what really makes the wheel turn. what really makes the wheel turn is this next circle. I'm going to share my screen for a minute, just so we can look at a graphic of that. So just give me a second. So hopefully all of you can see this. If you're, maybe one of you or two of you are online through the telephone, good old-fashioned telephone, so maybe you can't see this. But essentially what I put up on the screen is one image of the inner circle, and then the circle around it, which is the negative and positive activities. And there's only two parts, but the two parts are really important in terms of how we, based on the three poisons, proceed moment by moment. We're either doing one of two things in terms of actual activities. We're either doing virtuous activities or we are doing non-virtuous activities. And the non-virtuous activities in this circle are represented on the right side, where there are beings being pulled downward, which connotates negative, being pulled down to a lower sort of state of mental processing or conscious flow. I don't like to always talk about them in terms of realms, but remember, we're trying to contemporize this and make it relatable to us in our daily lives. So those bluish sort of beings pulling down the beings that are in human form really are non-virtuous activities. Think of them as our mental states that we create based on the three poisons. Don't think of them as something outside. They're not something outside. They're not beings pulling us in one direction or the other. Get used to that. That's really important. And then on the left side, in the light blue, we see various beings, some holy beings from an Eastern point of view, monks. There's a yellow hat. You probably can't see it. It's so small on your screen at the top. In our Buddhist tradition, that's a Galupa monk, which is a form of Tibetan Buddhism, where we do practice compassionate activities as a way to move forward or upward in transforming non-virtuous activities, rooted in misapprehension and especially self-cherishing, in a positive direction, one that creates less negative states of mind and more positive states of mind. We're going to talk about what they are, because today we're going to finish talking about this circle, and then we're going to explore some of the realms, as they're called in David Nichtern's book. And we're going to spend a lot of time in that part of what's going on here. But it's really important to understand that these are the actual, this circle of positive and negative activities, or deeds as they're traditionally called, are the engine of what makes the world turn. So if we are, as individuals, as sentient beings that collectively, moment by moment, either are doing virtuous or non-virtuous activities of body, speech, or mind, move us in a direction of positive or negative, if you will. It's not like, this isn't about like leaving the wheel. This is about what is the quality of the existence that you have moment by moment in this existing cyclic life. There is an aspect of the wheel that, as is presented in Buddhism, if you remember back to the first course, we showed the full wheel. We showed the Buddha in the upper right-hand corner pointing over to the left-hand corner at the moon. And those are symbols of the Buddha saying that, and they're outside the wheel. They're beyond the clutches of the demon, the Yama, the Lord of Death, or the skeleton, Death himself holding the wheel. The inference there being that everything that goes on in the wheel is suffering existence, and not really the goal. So in Buddhism, there is the ultimate goal of moving beyond um, cyclic existence or suffering existence, or samsara, as it's called in Sanskrit. And that's what the Buddha is doing in the upper part of the diagram. But we're not really focused on that at this moment in our discussion about the wheel. We're really talking about how can we improve, transform, negate um, negative states of mind and nurture, develop, and blossom in a more full way, ideally all the time, which is what it means to be awake, to wake up. Um, and that's what we're really exploring here. So we do have to keep in mind the root of what is the wheel is telling us, which is where things come from. And then these two circles, if you will, are what of the positive, two halves of the second circle, which are the positive and negative activities, what they really bring to us as far as the flow of moment by moment in our mind. So what I'm going to do now is I have to move us to another image. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a second and switch us to another image. So bear with me. There we go. So let's see. So for a second, you'll see, let me move this out of the way. Hopefully you can see this. This is a diagram I sent around to, hopefully all of you received it. So this is a quick walkthrough. We're going to do a quick walkthrough of the essence of those activities that are characterized by the left and right half of the positive and negative activities in the circle. So in this traditional Buddhist representation, we'll see what they are. But before I start talking about them, I want to frame them in a certain way. It's important to understand that the way they're presented has to do with fundamentally activities that you want to avoid. That's what we're supposed to be doing, actively avoiding certain activities. And then the flip side of that is engaging in sort of the opposite activities, not sort of, but the opposite activities. And in Eastern practices, including yoga, this is like really very, very important concept. And it's something that is the what one prominent Lama, and I think David Nichtern talks about it in his book as well. He calls it simply practicing, quote, big no, N-O, like, no, don't do these things. They're really what will be sort of the death of you. And as I said, like even in Sanskrit, the word for like sort of big no or refraining from is himsa. And it's a very, very important foundational practice in a lot of Eastern traditions. Like I said, yoga. This is like actually at the very root of yoga practice, what's called the 8 limbs of yoga, the yamas and the yamas. And so I'm pulling the lens out a bit to say this isn't unique to Buddhists. It's more a lot of traditional Eastern sciences and practices and religions that embrace this as a foundational practice because it is the nature of what we're talking about. If you can maneuver yourself through certain kinds of practices, which we're going to try to explore some of those today. I want to make this tangible and practical. Like, so what do I do? You know, if I want to move in this direction, it's got to start with awareness of like, what are the virtues you want to pursue, and what are the ones you want to avoid. And they're always framed as the virtuous activities are the ones you want, are actually the actual avoidance of the bad ones. They're actually the activities. So that's what we're going to get into here. Now, it seems simple, but that's really sort of an important thing to understand. So as we explore this, I just want to put forth, what does the practice of virtuous activity create or result in? A virtuous activity is the cause of what we call merit. It's accumulating in your conscious. Remember, keep that picture in your mind of your conscious flow, moment by moment, and what is going in there. And if what's going in there are these klesha seeds that have a virtuous aspect to them, then you are going to have the results be what we call something in that ripens, being something that we, I don't want to use the word possess, but something that we gain that we call merit. And when it ripens in a person, it simply creates very positive states of mind. And that's synonymous. I think we could all understand that and logically understand that that's synonymous with healthy psychological and emotional moment by moment existence. And we're going to be exploring this mostly today, because today I'm going to talk about the three upper realms. So these directly move us into moment by moment experience, emotionally, mental states emotionally, towards those upper realms. And we'll contextualize them today. And contrary to that, real quickly, the practice of non-virtuous activities create or result in us something that it lacks merit. There is a lack of merit, which ripens in a person in the form of negative states of mind, which are synonymous with unhealthy psychological and emotional moment by moment existence. And that leads us to the lower realms. And remember, when we talk about these realms, we're really talking about something that could change for us individually in our flow moment by moment, where one moment we're experiencing a God realm. In another moment, we're experiencing a animal realm. And it really has to do with, don't think of these as external realms and that are populated by such things as hungry ghosts and hell beings and animals, or even gods or semi-gods or jealous gods, as they're called. These are really symbols of our mental states of mind, our emotional states moment by moment. Very important to remember, because we have within our ability, and this is all the wheel is representing externally for us, the methods and tools of practice that we can apply in order to direct how we move forward with our mental states moment by moment, or emotional states moment by moment. So I've had this introduction up here for a while. This particular author who wrote this gives a quick explanation of like kind of what I was just talking about. Sowing seeds, karmic seeds, kleshas, and how, remembering the laws of karma we talked about last time, how they are planted and they do not instantly result, meaning cause and effect, like you do a chemical experiment and the result happens immediately. Rather, it happens over time. These remain dormant and in our mind, as he calls it, or our consciousness, until they ripen. And that's when the effect is produced. So the table below, we'll finally move to the table here. Hopefully all of you can see this. I'll say it out loud so those who might not have access to this screen know what I'm talking about. There are three containers of non-virtuous and virtuous activities or actions. And they are of either actions you do in a physical form or bodily form, or in the form of speech, uttering literally something, And then down here, we have actions of mind. So the non-virtuous activities are on the left, the virtuous activities are on the right. And you'll see that the reason I like this chart is it, rather than just saying like killing, okay, we know that killing is a first non-virtuous action of body. Usually, traditionally, you would see the virtuous activity, the refraining from ahimsa, or the big no, you'd see it say non-killing. But I like this graph for a particular reason, and it's why I chose this one over there's hundreds of them. You can like Google this and you'll find hundreds of these. They usually would say killing, and then the opposite, not killing, stealing, not stealing. Again, refraining from is the virtuous. This puts this particular graph puts virtuous activities in the form of action, actually doing something. So the opposite of killing is actually protecting life of other beings, not just refraining from killing. Same with stealing, not just not stealing, but rather doing the antidote, if you will, practice of generosity, sexual misconduct, maintaining moral conduct. So not just putting it in the form of sexual behavior, which is a traditional way to present non-virtuous activity of body, but really, I really like this, like any kind of moral conduct that is taking care of yourself and others. It's a beautiful thing, it really is. Then when we talk about actions of speech, we have lying, and the virtuous version of that, if you will, is truthfulness. So don't just not lie, but go out of your way if you're going to speak truthfully as you can. For any of us who have maybe the karmic seeds of maybe hedging or not revealing our intent by omission, even. I mean, the definition of lying is a really tricky sand trap, quicksand trap. So something to really think about. This practice of speaking truth isn't as easy for some of us as it is maybe for others. And I sometimes have the jealous God realm emotion of wishing that it was always so easy to speak the truth. It's one of my things that I've had to learn over decades to be aware of in practice. We're all different. And so that's one of my self-reflections that I'm sharing with you at the moment. Divisive speech, using words to harm others or to cause conflict between them. The opposite of that being reconciliatory speech, creating harmony among others, bringing foes for those that aren't getting along or that are in conflict, bringing them together. So again, it's active. It's not just being refraining, ahimsa, yourself from divisive speech, but it's actively participating in the kind of speech that is, if I may say, built on compassion, trying to create love and harmony and bringing people who are in conflict together. Really a beautiful thing. Harsh words. So using mean language such as swearing, that's pretty limited, this particular one. But the opposite of that is kind words, speaking peacefully and politely. So for me, harsh words is something that doesn't have to be like, swearing. It could have such a cutting, a phrase, an expression can have such a cutting result on the other person, depending on who you're talking to and what kind of intent you're bringing to the power of the comment that you're making. Um, and so the opposite of that, if you will, just sort of expanding the concept given here about what harsh words are, is really, you could really expand it. It's really trying to not just speak peacefully and politely, but with purpose of intent to bring the other person through your speech some kind of positive experience, um, one that has meaning uh, coming from your intent of wanting to help them. So see, I would try, you could play with this yourself, and I really, really, really encourage you to work with each one of what seems to be a simple list that probably all of us or many of us are really intimately familiar with, the so-called non-virtuous deeds, and expand it. Do some meditation in and around each one of these concepts and find your own expansive definition of each one. The fourth one is idle gossip. In the chart here, the author defines it as meaningless talk. So then the opposite of that is meaningful talk, speaking that which is important. So we all do this, I think. At least that's what I have experienced in my my life, and I'm first in line. It's sometimes very easy for many, many, many reasons to engage in idle gossip. And it isn't just meaningless talk. It's talk that has two aspects to it. One where maybe it has a harmful intent. Gossip can have a harmful intent. So again, remember, I talked about this in our first two sessions extensively, motivation and intent. But also, idle gossip is a form of laziness. Laziness meaning, like, if you made a little effort, your speech could be, and even in just regular conversation, could have more purpose. And even when it is lighthearted talk, it could if it has the intention and motivation of being loving and compassionate and giving, or trying to help infuse some joy or happiness to someone, it could be lighthearted. It could even not be meaningful in any overt way, but its intent and motivation is that you are trying to benefit somebody in some way. Remember, this is all rooted in what is happening in the flow of your conscious mind stream, moment by moment. Remember, kleshas, you're doing karmic ripenings, according to Buddhist cosmology, 64 times a second. There's such an intense flow of seeds being planted in our fertile soil of our consciousness. So the motivation and intent, even of speech, very, very important. And of course of action. So I find actions of speech to be a fascinating realm of contemplation, reflection, meditation, and discovery. Actions of mind, the first one we call covetousness, the opposite of that being non-attachment and being content with what one has. And as we could see, as we progress from the three of body and the four of speech and those of mind, the theme you're going to hear here is that expand, expand, expand. You even can expand these, as I said, the ones of speech can be expanded to have a broader definition. But when you come to actions of mind, which really all three containers, actions of body, speech, and mind, all have as their impetus behind every bodily and speech action, there is action of mind. So it becomes even more important to expand these limited definitions, if you will, and explore them and find the edges and the spokes on the wheel of each one of these three, even more than speech. But for the purpose of the discussion here, we see non-attachment and being content with what one has being the root of that. And this is a big antidote to one of the main three poisons: self-cherishing, self-grasping, attachment. Yeah, I think we could see that. I think that's pretty clear to all of us in our own ways, that if we think about and reflect upon how each one of us might partake in this particular type of activity of mind. The next one is harmful intent, malice and thinking ill of people. So the opposite of that is loving kindness, goodwill, and being kind to others. So kindness is a big theme here when we talk about an antidote to harming others with our thoughts, and generating mindful presence, moment by moment, of loving kindness, and feeling goodwill towards other beings. And in our practices, like that, even again, hearkening back to the set of meditation practices I shared with you at the end of last session and then sent around in a handout, that's what that set of meditations are meant to mentally grow in your mind stream, is a moment by moment experience of compassion, equanimity, not having ill will towards other people, even our so-called enemies. So we can see how those certain kinds of meditation practices are not just sort of like new age, like, oh, this is really nice. Like, the purpose of the wheel in the discussions we're doing in and around these sessions, and the meditations that I'm encouraging us to do, are with great purpose, potentially, if we see where what they're rooted in, how life really works, meaning karmic ripening, and how we could actually change that, adjust that, depending on who we are and how we feel we might need to be adjusted, if you will. Like, I don't know, like I could be the only one in this group that is not enlightened. You could all be like enlightened beings who are being kind enough to me to attend this session, to give me the opportunity to teach and work these things out for myself. And I don't know that. So I say, always sort of couch saying that, like, we could all work with these things, but I really can only talk about my own mind, and my own consciousness, and how I really need to work with things. And in Buddha, a being or a gathering of beings as bodhisattvas, those who live only with a presence in their mind, if you will, of something called bodhicitta, which is to be in existence only for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's possible, like what I just said, from a Buddhist point of view, that you're all enlightened beings. And if you are, thank you for giving me this opportunity. So the last one, actions of mind, wrong view, right view. Okay, so this has to do with ignorance or misapprehension. Wrong view is that fundamental experience, moment by moment, again, planting seeds with every interaction we have, dependently arising in connection with phenomena or other sentient beings, of not understanding the true nature of that experience and what that experience really is, and labeling it instead with something else. And in the realm of the three poisons, that's labeling it with something that you perceive that you desire and then attach yourself to, or something you push away, rather than having universal compassion and equanimity based on the knowledge of how things really work, that things really are not self-existing as with a quality that's fixed. It only depends on how I dependently arise with it. And that allows, if one can experience dependent arising events moment by moment through the lens of knowing that I only experience it with attachment or aversion because I don't apply or see it through the lens of compassion, through equanimity, through all of the 84,000 mental afflicted states that are not in the clarity of the clear light of what really is happening. This is what we're getting at here when we talk about wrong view, right view, because it's the toughest one to wrestle with and to understand, and one that one has to work with probably the most. And in Buddhism, again, this class isn't just for Buddhists, but in Buddhism, we have tools and techniques and practices and teachings and meditation practices that we do that bring us to an understanding of how things really work and the true nature of all things. So then, that's what this is alluding to. It's hard to talk about it too much beyond that, but that's intrinsic and fundamental to like the wheel, and what we need to keep in mind as we move forward into this ring of positive and negative actions of body, speech, and mind. And I will give creds here to the source that's at the bottom, Working with Karma. It's a really good book, by the way, if one's interested in exploring karma more deeply. And one thing I love about this text is that it's not just about understanding karma, but you see that key word there of transforming your karma. And that's that's a lot of what we're going to talk about over the next few sessions. And Geshe Tashi Cerullo is also a really wonderful teacher. He's a good friend of Geshe Darge's, and is part of our community in the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. So, in courtesy of Alexander Peck, who put the chart together, actually. So that is the essence of the positive and negative activities that emanate out from the inner circle. How do they do that? They do that in our mind stream. Okay, there's no other way that it can happen. If we didn't do activities of body, speech, and mind, positive or negative, what would happen? That would imply that we're going somehow beyond. It wouldn't negate us. It's not a nihilistic statement, but it would imply, from the point of view of the wheel, that we're able to go beyond the activities of everything and reach liberation beyond the wheel. Again, that points back to in the wheel of life as depicted here. I won't put it up on the screen, but we all remember that there's the Buddha in the upper right-hand corner pointing to the moon. That's the alternative. That's an option, by the way, and one that some sentient beings, especially humans, pursue. Not all beings who pursue spiritual practice have that as their goal. Some is to improve their mental state moment by moment, to live a happier life, to have a fuller life, to allow them to do maybe their own religious practices, not necessarily even Buddhism. So remember, this isn't about religion, but there is that implied opportunity that's there for sentient beings if one wanted to pursue a spiritual path that takes you to what we call in Buddhism liberation, or nirvana or full enlightenment. It's there and available to you. And the Buddha does his teachings do have that as a principle that can be pursued. So I'm just saying that. We're not going to talk about that so much in the next sessions. Maybe we will somewhere before the end of these sessions. So this kind of moves us to keeping the inner circles now, plural, the three poisons, which are sort of the foundational experience of our consciousness moment by moment, where we're planting seeds constantly through the the flow of our consciousness, that fertile soil of activities of virtue or non-virtue that then are considered causes, each one of those activities of body, speech, and mind that then eventually ripen. How do they ripen? They ripen because we hold on to them. We hold on to them. That's the water, the nourishment, the fertilizer that allows planted karmic experiences to not just be planted, but then over time to grow. And remember the laws of karma we talked about in the previous session, which have to do with that it grows. That's one of the laws of karma. You know, I talked about an acorn eventually grows into a giant oak tree. That's essentially like what happens with each one of the seeds that we plant. But they do have to be nourished, and they're nourished. And they're nourished by how strongly we misapprehend them, how much we grasp onto them or avoid them. You know, desire and hatred keeps putting the fuel to, or the fertilizer and watering and nurturing of those karmic seeds so that they can grow into something similar and something big, strong, even more powerful than the original seed. And that's important to understand. Please, we could talk about it in the Q&A section if we want to explore it more, but it's a fundamental principle of how not only the inner circle of the three poisons are the foundation for what happens in the flow of our consciousness moment by moment, but they are attached to the seeds that get spawned off into that bed of soil through these activities of virtue and non-virtue. But that's not enough. There's this dynamic play between those two circles where that constant misapprehension, it doesn't come and go, it's always there. An old teacher of mine used to say that every moment by moment experience that we have in samsaric existence or in cyclic existence or in this suffering existence, these realms of existence, they're all wrong. We don't see anything correctly, which sounds like we're pretty stupid, and it kind of makes you go, oh, really? Come on. But from this point of view of fundamental experience and understand what fundamentally is going on, it doesn't mean we don't know like 2 + 2 is 4. It means we don't know the true nature of 2 + 2 is 4. Not to get too cute. But this also implies something. What does it imply? It implies that if we can work with transformation of misapprehension into apprehension or ignorance into wisdom, and that can allow us to loosen the clutches of self-grasping. How? Through the tool of and aversion. How? Through the tools of developing compassion, love, equanimity. Then what are we doing? If those are the fuel, those three poisons are the fuel for the karmic seeds to ripen that are planted in our fertile soil of our mind, misapprehension, attraction, and aversion. What's happening if we work actively to negate them, to make them disappear, to strangle them, to kill them off? then those seeds can't grow. They shrivel and die. So even though, from a Buddhist point of view, even though karma is inevitable and we all experience it, to an unfathomable amount, moment by moment, individually and collectively, they don't have to ripen. They could sort of be, again, like an old teacher of mine used to say, it's like, think of like yourself in working with the three poisons and trying to transform them. It's like you're the air traffic controller. And the karmic ripenings are airplanes landing. And you can control whether or not they land, meaning they ripen and they fully result in the mind stream of your moment by moment experience. Or you can have them land and direct them to go be parked in a hangar, an airplane hangar, and never come out. So sort of to be laid dormant, not to have them ripen. So the point of this ramble is purposeful in the sense that for some of us who might, because I know I have over the years, wonder if everything is based on these three poisons, and then you have these two, positive and negative sets of virtuous and non-virtuous activities, and they're destined to, I've studied karma now and I see it and I understand how it works and I get it. Well, it kind of seems like predetermined, right? But it's like, what can I do about it? I'm just stuck on this hamster wheel of life, and it's happening over and over and over. And those karmic ripenings are happening over and over in such a voluminous way that what am I going to do about it? So the answer to that lies into why we're even here in this session and in these sessions, exploring the wheel, because the wheel doesn't just give you a picture of life, of how it works, but how you can actually work with your conscious moment by moment self, and work along the lines of being that air traffic controller, of being that farmer who decides with purpose to lay waste the soil of misapprehension that leads to attraction and aversion, because those crops are nasty, poisonous, and are not going to benefit anybody. And I'm going to replace them with something else. Wisdom, the opposite of ignorance. Compassion, which is the antidote to attraction and aversion. So these are really, purposeful practices, and having conscious awareness that this is what's in play here for you, in the opportunity of what the wheel doesn't just show us, but what it points us towards in terms of what we can do to work with ourselves, is really, really what we want to do in looking at the wheel and studying it and exploring it. So I would have to then say that leads us into what I call examination. So I'm talking about ourselves as individuals with this sort of fundamental understanding, hopefully, of what comes out of what we talked about the last couple of sessions in the first part of this session, which is an understanding of these two inner circles within the wheel and how they work. We only have the ability to work with ourselves, and that requires examination. Examination of what? It requires the examination of our own experiences, our own moment by moment experiences, our own pervasive mental states that we might have: anxiety, depression, anger, frustration, feeling like we're a victim, competition, envy, jealousy. I can go on and on. They're real. They're present in all of our moment by moment experiences. Now, maybe not wall to wall. I'm sure all of us can point towards, if we're good at examining and reflecting on our own moment by moment or pervasive experiences, of having that open, spacious feeling of happiness and bliss that comes with fill in the blank. It might be just a moment, or it might be something that seems to last for longer than a moment. And it could be characterized in many, many ways in your moment by moment experience. That's called good karmic ripening. That comes from virtuous activity. That's called uh, uh, glimpses of shunyata, or emptiness, the true nature of something, versus it being um, something that's still clothed to our apprehension in not understanding it. So it's not like we have that experience all the time of pervasive suffering, or even subtle suffering. But I think one of the things that we're going to explore in the next section of this session is looking at the three upper realms: the God realm, so-called God realm, the jealous God realm, and the human realm, which are considered the three realms that you're moved towards through virtuous activity, and create mental states of mind that that fit into one of those realms. Again, we're not talking about lifetime to lifetime. We're not talking externally. We're talking in terms of how we experience life. It can be over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, or moment by moment. Again, the Buddhist wheel represents it as actual states of existence. But remember, states of existence are analogous to states of mind. So this is important. And so what we really need to do is look at each one of the realms. This is what the next set of images on the wheel show us. I'm going to bring this back up. And these upper three realms in the, in the upper side of the wheel are the realms of existence that are considered the God realm at the top, sort of cut off a little bit in this diagram. The realm of humans, which is to the left, to the right in this diagram. And then on the left is the realm of the jealous gods, or semi-gods. It's really hard to see, but there's a cloud up here in the corner where they're shooting weapons up into the God realm, because we'll talk about like what that symbolizes in a minute. So that's really, let me get back to that image, sorry. Let me see if I could find another image here that would give us a picture of that. Oh, that's the inner realm. So this is pretty fuzzy, but here we could see in the lower right-hand corner, there's men there firing weapons, again, into the God realm. And then the human realm is over here. There's just a plethora of different kinds of activities going on. And we'll kind of see that when we talk about the human realm in a few minutes. And there's a contemporary representation of all the realms and also the inner circles. Again, this is from David Nichtern's illustration on the cover of his book, Awakening from the Daydream, which is one of the two books we're using as a source for this course. So, we can see that the representation here is slightly different, but we get the message, in terms of those three realms. So with those in mind, I just want to say that what we're going to try to, I'm going to try to walk through here quickly, so we can leave some time for questions and a meditation, are these three realms, or what I call mental states of experience. And it's important to look at them through our own experiences. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be asking you to try to be mindful and aware of different experiences you have, mental states, emotional states that you might be able to pin to one of these three realms, or for that matter, it could be one of the other three realms too. And then maybe take time to reflect and even contemplate and meditate possibly on where they come from. See the connection back through virtuous and non-virtuous activities. See the connection back through their source in the flow of your consciousness to one, two, or all three of the three poisons. So the first realm is the God realm. And in the God realm, that realm is characterized completely by pleasure. There's a constant state of pleasure for the being that's in the God realm. There is instant access to whatever they want on any level, experientially. Never lacking, nothing. It's just pure pleasure. Notice I don't say that it's pure bliss. I don't say that it's pure happiness. I don't say that it's pure liberation or nirvana or paradise or heaven, because it isn't. It's one of those six realms in suffering existence. Well, what's so suffering about it? We'll talk about that in a second. But first, we'll talk about the cause of it. The cause is from previous efforts in virtuous activity. So virtuous activity leads to, remember, I said this in passing, but remember the graphic where the beings are being pulled up towards a higher realm of existence. Underscore realm of existence, not to nirvana, not to outside the realm, not to the Buddha pointing to the moon, but within the realm of existence. That means the God, the semi-God, or human realm. And it's based on the cause of previous effort in virtuous activity, accomplishments in virtuous activities, constant virtuous activity and benevolence, but lacking one thing, lacking wisdom and compassion, lacking those fundamental tools that allow one to see that the goal isn't self-grasping, personal, individual pleasure. And pleasure means here removal of pain, removal of suffering, removal of awareness of suffering. I don't want that. So the result here for someone in this realm is a world that is almost all sufferings removed, especially when it's not relevant to them as a sentient being. Here's the big punchline, though. Does it last? Or here's the big question: does it last? Meaning forever. Is it not impermanent? Is it not changing? I think we all know the answer to that. The answer is no, it's not permanent. It's not. And that is the suffering of the God realm. That something cannot continue that's pleasurable forever. Yeah, you have access to whatever you want. It's like an addiction. It's an addiction to like this blissful state of pleasure. It's complete mental absorption, complete ease, complete comfort, complete joy. It's a powerful, powerful form of what? Attachment. And that's the root suffering of this realm. And even if I pull back and look at like, well, how does somebody like get to this realm? What's somebody who probably does some really deep practices, might I even say spiritual practices, but lacking wisdom and compassion. And it leads to this kind of falsehood of I'll call it addiction to spiritual bliss. So, it's not an easy realm to get to, but it's one that you can have. and it's and to sustain it is impossible. And it's that sort of subtle understanding of that, which is the mindset of a being in this state, mental state. Um, there's an avoidance of pain. There's an avoidance of disappointment, irritation, discomfort of any kind at all costs. That's the suffering of somebody in this realm. They're never going to be physically uncomfortable. They're not going to have diseases. They're not going to have like anxiety and depression and all of that. It's just that they know there is an end to this. And the pain is avoidance. They're avoiding that reality, ever having it present in their mind stream, and just partaking in the addictive bliss of pleasure. This is the goal. I mean, the real problem with being in that state. And if we bring it down to earth, so to speak, we could probably come up with some of our own examples of being in a blissful state and thinking that it will never end. And it could be a moment by moment thing, or just like sort of event driven. You know, so like I can use an example of my own. When I had my own company back in the 1980s, I worked really hard to be successful. Kind of like somebody who might be doing virtuous activity to reach this state of mind. And my goal was to be successful. I was successful enough that I was able to sell my company to a bigger company and go to work for them and be given a position of great standing in that company. And I avoided any thoughts that it might end, for some reason. It might end. I wasn't pursuing like anything in any sort of zealous way. I was just living in the bliss of this great job, this great activity that I wanted and I got, and I was really happy in it. But I avoided like looking at like how it might end, and it did end. It did end, and I wasn't prepared for it because I avoided it. I didn't look at the true nature of what was going on. And I'm speaking in a very not spiritual way, just like an ordinary existence way, where I was very much involved in the day-to-day consumption and pleasure of the work and the position, the power. Yeah, being kind, you know, as much as I could to the people who work for me and all that kind of good stuff. But there was somebody who was out to get me, and I didn't realize it, and they whacked me and they took the job from me. So, you know, it's a long story, but that's an example of living for some period of time, for some years, on a job level. And by the way, we could be, underscore this, please. We mental states wise, we could be in many states, realms of existence per the wheel, the human, all six of them, the God, the jealous God realm simultaneously, because we're complex beings that have karmic ripenings going on. You know, it's unfathomable. I've used that word in each session now, how many times we are having the, you know, karmic ripening experiences that we couldn't even hold them all in our mind if we were, you know, superhuman. So this is really sort of, you know, that's one example from me. You know, another one for me could be just the idea of being successful. It's a concept. So now I'm not talking about like an actual position in life, but just being successful, being addicted to being successful. Fill in the blank. As a father, as a husband, as a, you know, in your job, in your Dharma practice, at every level, be successful. And this is why I put this one for me in the God realm, doing it blindly, where you're avoiding even looking at the pitfalls of what might be present that you could really make true and informed in wise progress in any one of those if I didn't avoid all the things that were painful about any one of those endeavors. Pain is something that for a human, if it's experienced through, apprehension of what's really going on, not being overly attached or overly avoiding anything about it, can be the most blessed thing that happens to you. But you have to be present to it. And someone who lives a life of success with blinders on to the exclusion of everything else and enjoys it within that, definition they have in their mind without looking at all of the full picture, so to speak. This is another example. So I'm trying to give you some examples that, as I'm going to ask you over the next couple of weeks through the next couple of sessions, to be aware of your own experiences where you could identify which realm they might go in. And then we'll talk about meditation practices and other practices where that you can use that, to make steps forward, and recognizing them and how where they really come from, and then doing some things to transform them. So maybe, I'm not going to ask, we're not doing it. If we're in person, I might pause here and go, well, anybody want to share with us, like one of their. So rather than do that, I'm saying, think about it over the next week and then bring that to the next class. And I don't mean you have to share it, but bring maybe what comes out of that, maybe in the form of question or dialogue. I think that's something I really would enjoy seeing, because that's really where we're at, what we're going after here. Okay, we're going after how can we use the wheels, tools and techniques to bring about that kind of change. So really, David Nichtern put some examples in his book. So if you have the book, you might want to read that. That might spark plug. My couple of examples might not have been so good for you. But he talks about this guy going to a beautiful restaurant. It's beautiful. Everything's beautiful. Everything's perfect. The food, the wine, the ambiance, the everything. And he went home and he got food poisoning, and it was the worst night of his life. Boom. So that's an example of being in the God realm and falling quickly into the hell realm, from moment to moment in the same evening. But more pervasively, he talks about people living in beautiful surroundings. Think about the 1%. I'm not part of the 1%. I'm not insulting anybody in the 1% who owns 99% of the wealth in our country. But think about the way some of them might live. Beautiful surroundings. They have everything they want and need. But maybe internally, they're avoiding, again, the pervasive suffering that might be present to one or more of them, like acute anxiety, depression, resentment, some other mental state or emotion that is just sitting there waiting to, and they're not, the point is they're not working with it. That's the state that happens in the God realm. It's really tough for them to look at it. We have to be empathetic to that and try to understand that. It must be horrible. It must be a really difficult. So you can see how the God realm, with everything it offers someone, as I started out in this section, talking about you can have everything you want, it is really just as part of suffering existence as any other mental state, right? So the problem of this realm is really rooted in misapprehension, doing those virtuous activities, but not through the lens of wisdom, through apprehending things correctly. And meditation practices, including the one that David Nichtern puts in his book, point the way towards one meditation of many you can do to be an antidote to this. So the opportunity here, the antidote, is to use compassion, to practice compassion first as you can learn it and experience it on the cushion in meditation and also in reflection, and move yourself away from self-grasping. That opens up space in the flow of your consciousness where you can start to have the opportunity to look at your own suffering and then see where it comes from, and maybe make a change where you can deal with that state. Psychiatrists and psychologists call it, like in therapy, turning towards it, it being what you need to deal with. And when you can look at it with wisdom and understanding, it's called insight. You gain insight, and then this starts to transform your day-to-day, moment-by-moment experience. So, it's very real, what's here and available to us in terms of practices we can do to work with this realm. Can even look at the Buddha's own life, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, born in, as a royal prince. His family did everything they could to block him off from experiencing any kind of suffering. They wouldn't let him go outside the castle as a young person. But once he sneaked out and saw and experienced fellow human beings that, he had the motivation to go out and see what was beyond the wall of his pleasure dome. He was struck by the suffering of others, and his compassion was ignited. So his own life of being born into this realm, this human realm, was one of a godlike nature, godlike realm, and he turned towards seeing what was beyond that realm. Again, think about it in terms of mental states, not like just like lifetime to lifetime. So we won't do the meditation practice today because we don't have time. We're only going to do one. But the practice that David Nichtern gives in his book, which I think is an excellent one, is contemplation and meditation on impermanence. And many of us know that type of meditation. And we could always do a series of meditation practices at some other time, informed by the wheel. But that's not what I wanted to do here today. But that's in that book. If you have the book, you could also just use David's book and do that particular meditation practice. And so I'll quickly want to just go over the next realm. I might stop there just so we can leave some time for questions, and then the meditation I like to do. Because I said I'd cover the first three realms, but we could do the human realm next time. So I started the God realm. And again, remember, this is all in connection with the results that happen from doing virtuous activity, the part of the circle of positive and negative activities that pull us in the direction of the upper realms being God, jealous God, and human realms. So the next one is the jealous God realm. This one is permeated by competition and envy. You just don't have confidence. You worry about sustainability, sustaining what you have. Remember the image from the wheel of the jealous gods going to war with the gods. They're firing, they're attacking, they're going to war. Why are they doing that? They want what they have. They're not satisfied with what they have. There's a constant itch to have more. That is based on mental states of paranoia. And we want to characterize these mental states: jealousy, relentless competition, always wanting to be better than the next person. And as I alluded to, like that image that I just alluded to a moment ago about it's the conditions are constantly filled with warfare. Now, it doesn't have to be literal warfare. Think about the battles that could happen from a mental state point of view within a person's conscious flow of mind that are some type of warfare, mental warfare. Remember the 10 non-virtuous activities, covetousness, ill will, the different kind that are barraging this person. You know, that's the karmic ripening that's happening, if you will, sort of uncontrollably. Always launching some kind of attack, always searching for respect, success, power, money, influence, never enough. And the fear that's there is it's not sustainable. If I don't get more, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. So this is the suffering. I think this is a little clearer, a little easier to see than the God realm of pleasure. So the mindset of a person like this is driven by, it is envious and driven by competition and wanting to surpass all others. You'll climb, we know that expression, that person will climb over everybody and their brother to get to the top, They must win the game, ultra competitive. But the price tag they pay, besides that fear built on that fear of sustainability, is they have to live from a mental flow conscious point of view, they have to live in a constant state of what? Vigilance. If I don't guard, protect, and attack, I'm gonna lose it all. It's hard for their life to be free of scheming. So even when you have friends, part of the calculation is, will they help me get ahead in some way, personally, professionally, otherwise, So you kind of choose your friends and associates tinged with that sort of view. You always feel the threat of competition. Punchline that David Nichtern puts in his book, he calls it competition over collaboration. Never satisfied. So we could see, if we look more closely at a diagram we might have at home of the wheel, and we look at that semi-God or jealous God realm, you can see why they're firing. They're at constant state of war. But remember, those are representations of mental afflictions that are in the conscious flow of that person moment by moment. So, examples for me would be, like, I have an editor who worked for me, who was a real coup for me to get him to come work for me. He used to be the editor at MTV Books, Viacom, Simon & Schuster, and I got him to come work for me at my company. And it didn't last very long, mostly because he didn't fit with the corporation, not with me. Him and I are still friends. But he went to work for a competitor, and a formidable competitor. Probably the company, the team he had, overall was better than mine. So I feared that, he signs books like in my realm, performing arts, music, especially. And I thought he'd like kick my ass, basically, competition wise. So it's that competition versus collaboration mode that I experienced. So I was really fearful that I couldn't sustain competing with him, that he'd beat me, that he'd be better than me in his results, and he'd take books from me that I wanted to sign and publish. Fundamentally, because I work as a publisher from the altruistic motivation and intent to benefit the author and bring their work to the marketplace. It's a good intention, but I had this weird thing going on. I had a jealous God realm thing going on with this particular editor, which I've worked out over the years. It was many years ago. It's not to say I'm not capable of that still, but I'm just saying. Another example is I shared with you, like, that successful job that I had for many years, where I the godlike experience, and then it was taken away from me. Because I didn't see it coming. I was avoiding that. That person became my boss. And I had to learn how to not compete and not be jealous and not feel like that person was going to try to crush me, and all the things we just talked about. And some of the meditation practices, by the way, for those of you who are Buddhists, that helped me tremendously with this particular person was doing Lojong practice, specifically the 8 verses in mind training. and number 5 particularly. And we're best friends, today, me and this person. Another one is somebody who's a little bit older than me. He is a super intellectual. He's somebody who is the academic, he's the ultimate academic in terms of Buddhist knowledge and his command of multiple languages related to Buddhist practice, Sanskrit especially, and Tibetan. He's amazing. But I've had moments where I felt jealous of him over the years, thinking that as I wanted to be a teacher, I couldn't ever measure up to him. And, not that I want to go to war with him, but, these are some of the kinds of things that even like a spiritual endeavor, like preparing yourself to maybe go in the arena of teaching Dharma, can be tinged with, some mixed karma, as far as what's really ripening. And you have to be present to calmly, gently. I'm patting myself, gently, because sounds like I'm beating myself up. You have to be really gentle with yourself when you do the practice of examination. This is all of our nature and all of our experience, individually and collectively. And to do this sort of examination can lead to, don't be like the gods in the God realm. Don't avoid it. But also don't be careful that you don't get too hard on yourself. You can't beat yourself up. You have to explore these things with gentleness and kindness toward yourself. And the meditation practice we're going to do today, I think, is a good antidote for that, potentially. But even on a simple level, I'm 66 years old. When I was a teenager, I was really handsome. I had like long blonde hair, and I was good shape. I was a good athlete. I was a decent musician, which was important to me. So just this morning, I'm shaving, so I'll look good, for the class. I didn't shave since Friday. Yesterday was Saturday, and as I'm shaving, I'm like, God, look at this thing here. It's like really sort of horrible. They call this like a I forget what they call it, like a rooster's neck, Well, I'm not as handsome as I used to be when I was younger. I wonder if I could put the camera a certain way where I don't look, but I don't see that, these are going through your mind. Like I'm not hovering on it, but, within that, you're looking at being jealous of somebody who's younger and using your memory of your past to be a painful sort of like, and then your present of like, am I going to look good on camera today? And even projecting it to the future, which is like, it's only going to go downhill from here. So, this stuff is like, doesn't have to be big, grandiose thing like your boss, or like, it's like moment by moment, like stuff, right? That's what we're talking about. Awareness of that. So, I sort of shared that sort of thing with you because the best place to really sort of pull it in is like if you're sitting, if you like sort of keep a notebook where you can like jot down a word. So like I have a piece of paper next to me while I'm shaving, and so like I just wrote down shaving, past, present, future, like boom. So it's almost like instant awareness. But then also when you're on the meditation cushion, you can do that. The real problem is these kinds of things. I expressed them like rapid fire a moment ago. They can permeate and insidiously be present in your mind stream. They jump in and they grab you. And I'm saying they, but it's your own, it's yourself. It's your own mental state ripening moment by moment, grabbing onto it or letting it go. What are we doing? So the shaving thing was, that's easy to grab onto and let go, because it's like, I don't really have a major problem with that, but it's still there. I don't live in nirvana, So the opportunity is basically to get past that self-involvement that is present to somebody who's in this mental state of mind. Um, and I will say, particularly for any of us who are creatives, because I live in the creative world personally and also professionally, is that this state is a really powerful trap in terms of mind stream flow for creative and talented people, even with for those who have spiritual leanings. That's why I gave you an example of being jealous of like a fellow teacher, you know, and even like I just mentioned, like the 8 verses in mind training. Like, so another thought for some of you who maybe attended a couple weeks ago, Wilson Hurley's teaching on that, which I didn't see, but I had the passing thought, like, I wonder how Wilson presented that. I wonder if I did it, would my presentation be better than his? It's like, what, you know, like that kind of thing can go through your mind, like this, you know, and it's like you sort of like analyze it and let it go, you know. So these are the kinds of things you want to capture experientially and examine and work with. This is how you can make progress. Not like those trapped in the God realm who avoid everything and therefore they don't ever make progress. Their fall is the biggest fall. They fall from the heights of pleasure, and when it ends, because they didn't do any work like we have available to us in the human realm, they go right to the bottom. You know, it's a terrible thing. Um, so the one thing to underscore here is, since I'm amplifying it so much, is that each one of the realms has certain qualities embedded in them. Again, we're talking about, you know, mental states that can, if we identify them, which is why I'm encouraging you guys to do examination, if you identify them, can be transformed. We just have to be able to strip away, you know, sort of the ignorance and self-grasping and an aversion rooted aspects of each one of our moment by moment realities. So the nice thing about this realm is that it does have the quality, because I'm beating the heck out of like this realm in terms of all the negative things. It has the quality of clarity, seeing things clearly, and having a high degree of fearlessness, but tinged with that envy and compassion and competition. Again, that competition versus collaboration that David Nichtern talks about. You want to replace that competition, that tinged competition edge, with compassion. Compassion is this incredible tool. And so, you know, self-involvement really equals misery. So the practice here is cultivating compassion, and the particular meditation that that David asks us to do, and I have my own version of this, and that's what we'll do here at the end of the session, is doing a Tonglen meditation. It's called the practice of taking and giving, or taking and sending, or giving and taking. And we'll do a version of that I like to do. So I think I'll end there. And take any questions, and then we'll do the meditation. But hopefully you can see that the review I did of the inner circle, then connecting it hopefully like directly with how the negative and positive activities play out in every passing moment of our existence, and how that leads to, because they're the causes, right? And they lead to the results or the effect through a karmic ripening process to us having these mental states of mind moment by moment, as I described in these two realms. Next time I'll go over the human realm. Maybe we'll spend more time on that, as that will be something that will, where we maybe could relate to the most, because we're all, you know, we're literally in the human realm. And then we'll move on and talk about the other realms. All are purposeful and present in our lives, I think we'll find. So I'll end it there. Take any questions you have. We'll pick it up next time talking about the human realm, as I said. Not enough time to talk about that today, even though that was part of the reading. So I'll look and see if anybody had any questions. Okay. I'll go.
John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I'm on the phone now. It's Gloria. Is there, what correlation, and it may be a much longer topic, between the mental state of the realms and actually rebirth? So if
Yeah,
I'm reborn in the God realm, I really appreciate the correlation with the mental state, right? And how we operate now, but what about when we're reborn?
yeah. Well,
yeah.
yeah, and I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also going to answer it by saying that we will. You're right in your opening statement that it's for another time, but it's for another time in this series of sessions. We'll talk very much about that when we talk about the 12 links of dependent origination, which come after our discussion of the 6 realms. Because it gets into a conversation of taking the components that we talked about today, which is karmic ripening and how that happens, and what kind of karmic ripening projects us. Remember that word, projects us forward in our mental and conscious continuum from the end of this life through to the next life. And that's what's at play in that process for those of us that are Buddhists. And it's imperative that while we're in this realm, we find, if we have the motivation to look at what Gloria is asking, it's imperative that we take the time of our precious human birth that we have in this existence and use it. Being born a human, we'll talk about it more in next class, is a unique opportunity to practice, do certain practices where we can do these sorts of transformations to, not necessarily selfishly, but hopefully imbued with compassion, project karmically into a better realm next time, meaning rebirth, as Gloria is asking. And Gloria, if that's okay, I'll leave it there and then we can talk about that.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I knew it was a different topic, but by you connecting it like you did, it already helped. So thank you.
Okay, good. And on the board here, message board, sorry, the chat board, Rachel, do you have a question? Put your mic on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Hey, John. The content was excellent and really provides a lot of insight. Quite beautiful. Thank you. And thanks for being so vulnerable in what you shared about yourself. So my one question is, when we work to change our karma, to transform by living virtuous actions, are we doing this to decrease our own mental and emotional personal suffering? Or are we doing it to benefit the collective good, the greater good for all sentient beings?
Yeah, well, they're not mutually exclusive is my answer. If we can't take care of ourselves and improve our own mental states of existence moment by moment, we're going to be of less benefit to others. Plain and simple. In Buddhism, there's something called taking on the mind of bodhicitta. And I've used that before, even in this class. And I said, bodhicitta is the wish to reach, from a Buddhist point of view, it's the wish to reach enlightenment, which means omniscience, for the benefit of other sentient beings. And in Buddhism, that's called the king's way, king, like a king. And it's called the king's way because of what I just said right at the beginning of my answer to your question, that if we as a sentient being want to help other people, the best way, the most potent way, the most meaningful way, the most lasting way is to reach enlightenment, but not to reach enlightenment, period, to reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that statement, bodhicitta, goes to the question of who are we trying to benefit here? Quite often, to your question, sentient beings who pursue virtuous practices, especially spiritual practices, who are only doing it for themselves to remove themselves from suffering. And I'm not judging somebody who does that. It's not like it's what it is. I'm just saying that. Those are the kinds of the results are more in the God realm, where they reach karmic ripening moment by moment manifestation of pleasurable things that come from virtuous activities, but not motivated by trying to benefit others. Then this could be where you end up. So it's best to practice with the antidote to not having that happen, of imbuing your practices with compassionate intent and motivation, which is why that handout, which I referenced earlier in the teaching, that are those sets of meditative practices that are for bodhicitta, or to reach compassion and equanimity, are really they're a powerful set of meditative tools for this reason. And did you have another question, or was that it?
Well, I have another one if it won't take up too much time.
Oh, go ahead.
How does embracing mental and physical pain decrease suffering?
Yeah, well, I would say that it isn't probably so much the embracing of mental and physical pain. I would say any pain, mental or physical, or a combination of, that is present to you, that one could, as I was talking about in the context, just for analogy purposes, but I was talking about it in the context, for example, of somebody who goes to see a psychiatrist or a therapist, where they're able to turn to it, turn towards it, see it. Seeing it and experiencing it is not enough. What I mean by that is to see it, but not understand it, and to not be able to process it where there is a benefit to processing it. And I can't fill in that blank. It's filling in the blank of processing the myriad of physical and or mental pain or emotional pain or combinations of those, are so, like, they're so innumerable that, I probably could rattle off a few examples, but it's really has to be contextualized with the individual experience in it. And the point of the wheels teaching is that if we can do that, where we do it in the context of wisdom and compassion, understanding where it really comes from and its true nature, and here's the blank, and how that's operative in my life or your life, one's life, what purpose is it serving? That's where the benefit is. That's where, but the good news is there's benefit to every painful and suffering experience for individuals and for us collectively. And it isn't bad news. The challenge is there's work to find it. And one of the things that the wheel teaches us are some tools that we can use to find and discover what those benefits are. And again, in psychoanalysis and in psychiatry, more in psychoanalysis, they call that finding insight, so that it's worth turning to your pain. There is the grace of God is present in your pain. It's hard to find without help. And I'll talk about this more next week when we talk about the human realm, but that's where teachers and other people who are there for the purpose, with the motivation and intent to benefit you, fill in the blank, maybe your therapist, maybe your friend, maybe your dog, maybe whoever, because it comes in every way. Depends on how you see it. This is like the opportunities there in every single moment. And the more you do these kinds of practices that the wheel have to offer, every moment can turn into an amazing, fully awakened, aware experience, whether it's pleasure labeled by us as pleasure or pain. There's benefit there. Finding that is being in a state of bliss. It's possible, it's possible to have it be every single moment. getting to that is the path that we're on, and it could be fun and it could be rewarding as long as we don't grab it and just try to hold on to it and suffocate ourselves in the process. I'm going farther than answering your question. Sorry.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Okay. Another question, although we can't know the minds of other living beings, would it be helpful to also observe what realms I think it means think, other beings might be experiencing? Definitely. I believe, hopefully that question makes sense to everybody. I read it out loud. Basically, when we talk about the meditation practice we're about to do, so there's a good lead into the meditation practice we're about to do, having that observation, it might be imperfect, because we can't, like as you stated, this question comes from Karen, by the way. So, Karen, as you stated that, you're right. We can't know the minds of other living beings unless you're like omniscient, like, again, maybe all of you are, and I don't know that. Then, as long as your motivation and intent is that you want to be a benefit to them and you're not trying to do it, let's say, to like feel better about yourself, like, hey, I know where they're coming from. I'm pretty cool. I'm pretty good. Or something like that, right? As long as it's only for their benefit. And remember, in our teaching sessions that we tend to do in our tradition, we try to start every teaching. I didn't do it like outwardly today, but last two sessions I did, and I did it mentally, that I did the teaching. I dedicated the teaching with the intention of benefiting others and not myself. And then at the end, the bookend of that, in case you do what we're talking about here, and I'm saying it's okay to do, in case you might be somewhat mistaken, you always ask that, in your mind, you always put the thought out there. Remember, you're always planting seeds with all your thoughts, that even if you're not 100% correct in trying to understand where a person's coming from, what realm they're in at any given moment, as long as you're doing it with the purpose and motivation of trying to help them. But if you might be somewhat mistaken because you're only human, and please forgive me for that, put that out there in the universe, that has great antidote qualities to it in terms of doing something harmful to others. And it's also partly why we do a dedication at the end of every teaching as well, is sort of with that in mind. Does that make sense? Yes, you can shake your head. Okay, or you can go no. Okay, so were there any other questions? Because otherwise we can go to the meditation.
Hey, John, I had one thing, and I think it's been mostly answered, but what I really started in your talk was this planting the seeds in the fertile soil, how they ripen because we hold on to them or because we push them away. And I think it goes to Chris's question as well. But it's tricky because we could hold on to in this exploration of our patterns or causes of harm or the investigation, we could almost hold on to those negative seeds in a way as well, or we could push away the positive ones. And it seems in some ways like there's the road to simplicity is really complex. But in the end, isn't it just trying to soften? I don't know, John, help us out, help me out here,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It really, a lot of my method in disseminating, even just talking about karma, since that's what you brought up as as the example from earlier in the talk, is to contextualize it where it might make sense to us. Too often over the years, I've attended so many teachings and read so many books about karma And it kind of technically explains what it is, but it doesn't contextualize it. You know, what is karma? You know, it's the movement of your mind. It's the movement of your mind. And as soon as your mind moves, you're having a thought, or you're saying something, or you're taking some action. And so that's what karma, that's what a klesha is. And that's what gets, you know, that's the Sanskrit word for, you know, a karmic karmic cause. That's what's getting, when I say planted in your consciousness, you know, that you're the one thinking it. So it can only be planted there. It doesn't just evaporate. I mean, you can really drill down and get logical about it. And it is pretty simple. No matter what it is that you think, say, or do, whatever the motivation is, if it's done in the context of virtuous or non-virtuous activities, on the foundation of being informed or not being informed, meaning, you know, on the basis of ignorance or wisdom, of aversion or attraction, or the opposite of those, which is equanimity and compassion, you're still planting seeds, the klesha, you know, that are basically your experiences of life in thought, speech, and action. That's all that's going on. And those are what I was talking about in terms of ripening. And I was trying to do the contextualization where I'm talking about fertilizing it, helping it to grow, is by when we hold on to misapprehension of those events, don't really understand them. And those create us clinging onto those things or pushing them away. All three of those things are fertilizer. You know, they're just keeping it going. It's you're creating the most powerful karmic ripenings you could possibly have, whatever they are, virtuous or not virtuous. That's it in a nutshell. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay. So what we're going to do as far as the meditation practice is, and I mentioned it in passing earlier, is a practice in Buddhism that's called Tonglen, Tonglen. And as I said, it's also known as taking and giving. And it kind of reverses our usual logic of one of the themes we talked about today, which is avoiding suffering and seeking pleasure. In Tonglen practice, we visualize taking in the pain of others with every in-breath. So this is a breath meditation, and sending out whatever will benefit them on the out-breath. So we could see what's at play here. This is a pretty powerful exercise of being actively in meditation, being actively compassionate. And that experience is something that is like an exercise in trying to build up one of these tools that I talked about in this particular session. So in the process, we become, if you will, liberated from age-old patterns of selfishness. We begin to feel love for both ourselves and others. We begin to take care of ourselves and others. Notice it's not just others, it's ourselves. It's that King's way I talked about as well with Rachel's question. So Tonglen awakens our compassion and introduces us to a far bigger view of reality. And what I'm alluding to there is it introduces us to the unlimited spaciousness of what's called shunyata, or emptiness. So by doing the practice, we begin to connect with the open dimension, space of our being, beyond misapprehending, beyond attraction, beyond aversion, literally replacing it with the opposite: wisdom, compassion, and love. All built on the foundation of understanding how the wheel of life works, which is why we're doing these sessions, how the foundation of virtuous activity versus non-virtuous activity and compassion, they can transform negative mental states of mind, not just get rid of them, transform them to positive states of mind. So this is really what this practice is about. It really has the ability to exercise that if we can keep in mind what we talked about today and reflect and study it a little bit more on our own. I believe that this can have that that effect on us. One other thing I'll say before we do the meditation proper, because I think they're wise words from somebody much wiser than me. I come from the Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron, and she tells us, she tells us in her Tonglen meditation practice, she says, breathe in for all of us and breathe out for all of us. Sounds pretty simple. Use what seems like poison as medicine. And that's what we'll experience here in this meditation of bringing in pain. Because usually we look away when we see someone suffering. Their pain brings up either our fear or anger, or brings up our own resistance and confusion even. So we can also do Tonglen for all the people just like ourselves, all those who wish to be compassionate, but instead they're afraid, who wish to be brave, instead they might be cowardly. Rather than beating ourselves up, we can use our personal stuckenness as a stepping stone to sort of understanding what people are up against all over the world. Breathe in for all of us and breathe out for all of us. Use what seems like poison as medicine, as Pema Chodron says. We can use our personal suffering as the path to compassion for all beings in the process. This is all what Tonglen has to offer. So now we'll do a Tonglen meditation, and it has 4 stages. So I'll walk us through those 4 stages. So we're going to start now, and as you would normally do, try to sit in a Vajra position if you happen to be on a meditation cushion. If not, sit up straight, relax your body, try to bring yourself to a calm, focused center, relaxing your limbs, focusing in on your breath, especially on this meditation. Your breath is your focus. Slow down your breath gradually, doing an in breath and an out breath. And I'd like you to focus on your breath in that way, in and out, not the other way around, as you think about your complete breath being in 2 parts, in first and out second. So try to rest your mind for a second or 2 in a state of openness or stillness between thoughts. That gap that I talked about in our last class that happens between our thoughts. And this stage is traditionally called flashing on absolute bodhicitta, awakened heart-mind, or opening to basic spaciousness and clarity. Try to be aware of the gaps between your thoughts and rest there. Be in the open space beyond your thoughts. Now, move your mind in concert with your breath. Breathe in feelings of heat, darkness, and heaviness. And breathe out feelings of coolness, brightness, and light, a sense of freshness, sunshine. Breathe in completely, taking in negative energy, through all the pores of your body, or if you're more comfortable, through your nostrils, or both. With a calm mind, allow this negative energy to ride in on each breath, on each inhale. Visualize it coming into your nostrils or through the pores of your body and easily traveling down to your heart chakra, or coming through all the pores of your body like a magnet being attracted to your heart. Once at your heart, see all of it melt away from the radiant and powerful light emanating from your heart. This light is no ordinary light. It's the light of awareness of how things exist, accompanied by compassion of wanting to help yourself and all others end their suffering. No darkness, negative energy, or self-grasping mental states can survive this radiant light. All is melted, and most importantly, transformed into light, positive energy, and compassionate mental states. And when you breathe out, carry with it that extraordinary light of wisdom and compassion, that radiant light imbued with positive energy and compassion, compassionate mental states. Again, breathe it out through all the pores of your body or through your nostrils, whichever feels right. Try to do this visualization and synchronized with your in and out breaths a few times. Now, I'd like you to focus on any painful situation that's real to you. You can begin by doing the practice for someone you care about and wish to help. So the painful situation can be someone else's that you call to mind. Bring it to you, bring it to right in front of you. Even if it's your own feelings, bring that to yourself, to your mind in front of you so that you can see it. And further, try to spontaneously feel the same kind of, be aware of the same kind of suffering that others might have who have the same kind of suffering. A suffering that you feel and that you're bringing to mind. Just have an awareness that others feel that too, and have that present to you. So for instance, if you're feeling inadequate, which is a mental state, a negative mental state, breathe that in for yourself and all others in the same boat, and send out on the out breath confidence, adequacy, and relief in any form you wish. Remember, as you breathe in the pain, dissolve it in wisdom and compassion at the radiant light at your heart. And that's the transformed experience that you bring back out to either yourself and or others. Finally, make the taking in and giving or sending out bigger. If you're doing Tonglen for someone you love, extend it out to all those who are in the same situation. If you're doing Tonglen for someone you see on TV or on the street, do it for all the others who are in the same boat. Make it bigger than just that one person. And then if possible, feel yourself expanding your Tonglen practice to people you consider to be your enemies, those who hurt you or hurt others. Do Tonglen for them, thinking of them as having the same ailment or mental affliction or confusion or stuckness as yourself and your friends. Breathe in their pain and send them relief in any form of an antidote mental state. Having done that for a few breaths, we'll end the meditation. Bring yourself out of the long breathing and let go of the Tonglen giving and taking, or taking and giving, and bring yourself back to your normal state, as that's the end of the meditation. And as you're doing that, I'd just like to say a few words about Tonglen. Tonglen's a really resourceful, practical, and powerful compassion tool. It can be extended infinitely. It can be extended as your mind might be able to hold as many other sentient beings as possible. You can also micronize it. If you feel like you need to do some practice gradually and at your own pace, you can just focus on yourself or some other person, and limit the focus. Both are extremely powerful and helpful. And you'll be surprised that if you do start in that gradual way, which I encourage you to do, it's usually more productive. You'll be surprised to find yourself more and more able to be there for others, just naturally, moment by moment, even in what you used to seem like impossible situations. It is the power of transformation of negative mental states using this powerful tool. And one other thing I will say is that you can do Tonglen anytime. You could be walking down the street and slip into a Tonglen meditation if you become aware of something in your mind, or if you see something in your phenomena dependent arising experience at that moment. Transform that dependent arising moment by doing a Tonglen practice. You don't have to sit on a cushion. You just have to adjust your focus. Don't be crossing the street while you're doing it, maybe. But so when I say walking down the street, the point is you don't have to be on a meditation cushion, and you can do this at any time. I've done that for years, and I can only say that in my own modest, witnessing, I can say that I've been surprised about what I said a moment ago, how I react to people and situations. That's it. It's been changed. I don't react with the same karmic ripenings that maybe are more about me and not them. So that's one of the meditations also that David Nichtern, his is a little different. You could also check his out. I will underscore one last thing before we hang up, and that is that I feel that Tonglen practice like this, one of the aspects of it that could be challenging for people is this concept of bringing pain into yourself, like literally bringing it into yourself. And some Tonglen practices don't include, like I know even Pema Chodron's, who I mentioned, doesn't include bringing in this darkness and this heat and this pain and dissolving it. You just bring it in on the breath, and then you bring out those opposite qualities, if you will, on the out breath. And I feel that creating, even if it's imaginary to start, the heart of compassion that radiates light, which is a powerful practice. And it's very auspicious to have your heart radiate light that has the character and aspects of positive mental states, peace, calm, specific attributions like, the example I gave during the meditation. Very, very important to do the transformation process. Do the transformation process of not only bringing in fill in the blank, negative qualities, aspects, energy, but transform them by dissolving them and having them like rise, if you will, like the phoenix from the ashes in a positive form. And I feel that's a safer way to do Tonglen practice, in the sense that you won't cause yourself any subtle or psychic or emotional harm. You're not bringing in suffering and pain and in a way leaving it there. That's not really the idea. And that's not the idea of any Tonglen practice, but sometimes that's not, that extra tool or visualization isn't included. So I'm underscoring that for you because I feel like we're doing a very powerful, a lot of you know this practice, but we're doing a very powerful practice, and it's important to respect the power that it has and take care of ourselves. Remember, I said be gentle with ourselves, and don't do the practice if it feels uncomfortable, where it makes you like your thoughts or your emotional experience of bringing in pain cause you any discomfort whatsoever. So for those who might have a challenge that way, I would adjust your Tonglen practice to be one that is more focused on still using the breath, but using the giving half of the practice exclusively. You can identify still the person or your own and or others similar, the way I described in the meditation, suffering and pain. Look at it, see it. Be open to it, don't avoid it, right? Like we talked about. But you don't have to bring it in. But seeing it is a step in the right direction. But as you're seeing it, then create that compassionate heart, radiating light, and do that part of the meditation where you're bringing them your compassion of the positive energy that's sort of the opposite of the labeling that you identified of their pain. Something that would be an antidote. You're helping them. And that's still a very, very powerful Tonglen meditation. It's altered quite a bit, but it is something that you can do. In Buddhist practice, the practice of radiating light from yourself is multi-layered and has lots of powerful value to it. So doing that part of the practice is still very beneficial. I'd rather you do that than shy away from doing it if you feel at all uncomfortable with doing the first part of it. So, and I'm only proactively suggesting that because none of you have shared that with me. But over the years, I've had many people share with me that they love the practice, but in that way, it's been challenging for them. And sometimes then they avoid it. Better not to do that. Maybe try and or just take it really slowly, like I said a few minutes ago. So that's it. We're 15 minutes over time, but I'm happy that we had time to do a meditation versus last time where I just went boom. I didn't feel very good about that, but time's always a factor. So that's it. For the next class, for those of you who are here, it's pretty straight ahead. We're going to cover in David Nichtern's book, which was part of this class's readings, the human realm, but we'll also cover the animal realm, and possibly the other two realms. I'm not sure, but you can feel free to read ahead in his book on the realms. And then we'll turn and spend a little time talking about the reading that was assigned for this class in next class that came from The Wheel of Life from Buddhist Perspective on Cause and Effect by the Dalai Lama. If any of you read those pages, you could see how different they were than David Nichtern's book. They're very Buddhist. And they talk with, His Holiness is talking to a Buddhist crowd, audience, and he's short speaking it in the sense that he's not contextualizing it for a broader audience. And so I'd like to take a little bit of time in talking about that section of the book because there's incredible value there, but it needs a little interpretation and dialogue. So we'll do that. And I think that will be beneficial as well. Next class, so maybe pass that along to others who might not be here today. And that would be helpful. And I'll try to take the Tonglen meditation that I just did and write it up. And I'll listen to the recording too. Maybe that will help me. And then I'll maybe make a handout out of that and send it around to you for those who found some value in that. And yeah, so that's it for today, I think. Next class is, I think, next week. Yeah. So, by the way, in terms of the class being, how long are we going to go? We'll do probably one more session on the realms, maybe two. So like I said, read ahead. We'll definitely cover the human and animal realms next time, but we might go through the what are called hungry ghost and hell realms, although I might like to give them a little more time, but probably finish them next week. And then we're going to move into doing some more in-depth exploration, which was to Gloria's question earlier about the 12 dependent links of origination. So all that will be what unfolds through the rest of the course. There's 12 links. We'll probably cover 2 or 3 per session, but my goal would be to get through the rest of what I intend to cover in these sessions by I think Gloria's got us scheduled for today, as far as March goes, next week, and then, which is the 14th, and then the 28th. And then my hope would be that we're done by what would, I think, be the last class, which is the week of which is April 11th. That's the week after Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is the 4th. And there's another teaching going on that morning, which I encourage people to go to. But I think we'll probably finish up on the 11th. On the calendar, it goes on in terms of reserved dates to the 25th and even some dates in May. But my goal would be to take probably no more than 3 or 4 more sessions at the most. My goal was to try to cover this in 6 or 7 sessions at the most. So I think that's where we're at. I just wanted to give that overview to wrap us up. So hopefully you guys can make it next week, but we're done for today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.